Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Homeschool Minnesota. I just wanted to just give you a little heads up. Today, we are going to do our summer 2025 version of the Maché Book Club. Now, for those of you who have joined us with other Maché Book Clubs, you will know that this is our director, our executive director of Maché is Rob Prigge, and his wife, Susan, knows everything there is to know about books. This woman is amazing. She's read everything, haven't you, Susan?
Yeah, right. I don't think so.
And so I'm excited to have her. For those of you who don't know and you're new to book club, so what we do is we, in kind of an effort to give you guys really great ideas for your family, for your kids. So we have books for all ages, preschool through adult. Sometimes we have a little less on certain things, but it's just, and not only are the books and the titles that Susan are going to introduce to you today, not only are those good, but then those authors. So even if we just touch on one book, you can go and know that those authors, anything by them is going to be amazing. So we're just going to give you guys a bunch of information. If you look in the description of this podcast, you will find a link to Amazon, because Maché has a book list on Amazon. Now, we make no money off of it. This is just for you. You don't have, it's just for you to see it, to be able to order off of it. All of our book club, from the time we first started doing it a year ago, Susan, we started doing book club a year ago. So from a year ago until now, every book that we've discussed, every author we've discussed is on there, including our holiday version, which we have a really good holiday version of book club that gives you lots of great ideas for Thanksgiving and Christmas, things that you can do with your kids. But today we're going to talk about summer and things that you guys can do. Now, I live in Minnesota. We live in Minnesota. And so Minnesota, summer is when we get out. We have 10,000 plus lakes to enjoy, and people are at the beach and enjoying that. And we have grassy beaches in Minnesota, just so those of you can get an idea. We don't really enjoy sandy beaches a whole lot. And so we just spread out a blanket under a tree, because we have trees around our lakes in Minnesota, and we get all cozy, and the kids are playing, and moms can read or kids can read. It's wonderful. So enjoy today's version of Maché's Summer 2025 Book Club. Welcome, Susan. All that to say hi.
Hi, Jill. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on, and thanks for doing all the research that you do. I know that you're an avid reader, and I'm just super excited you share your knowledge with us and with our families. So just thank you so much for that.
Well, you're welcome, and it's my pleasure, because I do love books, and I like to encourage people to read to your kids and read for yourself. So
yes. Let's dive right in and talk about preschool.
Great. Okay. Preschool. The first recommendation I have is a book that's a classic, and many people may have already read it, but it's called Ferdinand, and it's by Munro Leaf. And it's also illustrated by a wonderful illustrator, Robert Lawson. And it's the story of a bull who would prefer to smell flowers and just
love this story.
Wander around the fields than to fight in a bullfight, which is what all the bulls apparently want to do. But he's very passive and placid by nature. And one day he encounters a bee, and that bee encounter makes him snort and stomp and run around. The townspeople whisk him off to a bull ring in Madrid, and it goes on from there. So it's a lovely little tale for preschool age kids, for sure.
It's one of my favorites for preschool. Yeah, it's a great story.
Book. And Robert Lawson is an amazing author. And one of the little tidbits is Munro Leaf was supposedly, he wrote this story on a whim in one afternoon in 1935 to provide his friend Robert Lawson with a forum to showcase his artwork, his illustrations. And so that's how it came to be, which is really cool.
Wow. It was meant to be an illustrated thing and not necessarily story driven.
Exactly.
Wow.
And another picture book that Munro Leaf wrote, he's written others, but I'll just mention one other that I've read that is really sweet. It's called Wee Gillis. It's W-E-E Gillis. And it's also illustrated by Robert Lawson, by the way. And it's a little boy who lives in Scotland. He's an orphan, and he spends half of each year with his mother's people because his parents have died. And then the other half, he lives with his father's kinfolk. And I think one lives in the highlands and one lives in the lowlands. And basically they each want him to settle down in their place and adopt their ways. And he tries both. And it's basically, he picks up all that he can learn from his elders, and he one day has to make a decision. And it's the story of the decision he comes to at the end of spending time with both families in the two parts of Scotland. So it's another wonderful book. It also received the Caldecott Honor for its illustrations by Robert Lawson.
That's so good.
So those
Yeah.
are two really sweet books by the same author. He also, just to mention Monroe Leaf, people may have heard of some of these books. They're called like Manners Can Be Fun, Arithmetic Can Be Fun, How to Behave and Why, How to Speak Politely and Why. He wrote a bunch of books like that, and they're really fun little books. I think they've reprinted some of them, and you can get them in paperback form now. They're old books. They were all, written back in probably the 30s and 40s, so maybe 50s.
All the best ones were.
Yeah, and they were. And the other little tidbit I'm going to mention just about Ferdinand is that was a name that the Australian coast watchers in World War II adopted as their name for their organization, because they basically well, your job is to watch and be passive, and it's your duty is not to fight. Your duty is to take notes and see what's happening and report this information. And he goes, of course, yeah, they could always fight if they got stung, he said.
That's so good. That's so good.
So the next couple books I'm going to talk about are by an author illustrator. His name is Jim Lamarche or Lamarck, I'm not sure. And these are more current books. One is called The Raft, and the other's called Pond. And they're beautifully illustrated stories that I think preschoolers would very much enjoy. The Raft is about a young boy named Nicky who is going to spend the summer with his grandmother because his father has to go to work somewhere. And so he thinks it's going to be the worst summer ever because there's nothing to do. He's going to be bored. His grandmother is an artist. She has an art studio in her living room, and he's expected to do chores while he's there, which that's not really enticing to him. So one afternoon, he's out trying to catch fish because I think his grandmother sends him out to catch some fish, and a raft floats down the river toward him. And something about having that raft and the ability to go out on this raft and kind of enjoy nature changes his whole experience of his time with his grandmother, and also brings out the artist in him. And it's just a sweet story with beautiful illustrations about the natural joys of the world and the people in it. And he basically grew to just love his grandmother and the time there and didn't want to leave at the end of summer. So it's a sweet tale.
That's so good.
And the other one, Pond, is also by the same author, and it's about a young boy who takes a hike one day, and I think it's in toward the city more. He finds this area where there's a lot of debris, but what looks like it may have once been a pond. And he decides in his imagination, I think I could make this into a pond again. So he enlists the help of a couple of his friends, and they go about, moving the debris and the rocks out of the way and restoring this small pond. And it's another sweet story of the bonds of friendship and hard work and envisioning something beautiful. And I thought that was another great little tale.
That's good. That's so good.
The next one I'll mention is another book that's a little bit older. It's called Andrew Henry's Meadow, and it's by an author named Doris Burns, published in 1965. And it's about a young boy who he has two younger brothers and I think two older sisters. So he's the middle child. And he's a smart little boy, very imaginative. He loves to invent things. And one day, I think he feels unappreciated by his family because he's kind of the middle child, kind of stuck by himself. And he decides it's time to run away. So he does. He runs away into a meadow and he builds himself a house. And then other children in the neighborhood are also feeling the same way. So they all ask if they can join him in the meadow, and he builds each of them a house. And they just have this lovely time in summertime and enjoying their unique homes, but they really miss their family. And it's kind of the story how the families miss their children and they miss their parents, and they realize it's a little lonely out in the meadow without their parents. So it's just a little heartwarming story.
I love that. Anything we can give our kids with some creativity and imagination, and that just sparks their creativity and imagination. So I can totally see kids hearing that story and going, let's go build a house.
I know.
And just finding ways to do it.
It's a fun little story. So I recommend that. Another author I recommend is an author named Roger DeVoyson. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I do not know.
We'll get the spelling right. It's okay.
Yeah.
All they need is the spelling.
One of the books he's probably most famous for is a book called Petunia, and it's about a goose.
Yes,
You probably have heard of it, haven't you?
I have.
And
I
they've been
don't remember it, but yeah.
most of them have been reprinted, so you can get them now because they were originally published in 1950, I think, in the
Yep.
50s. And it's about the first one is called Petunia, and it's very funny because it's about this goose who finds a book, and she decides that if she owns the book, she must be wise because she's got this book. And she starts going around to all her friends, different animals, and dispenses advice to them on things they should do based on her brilliance from owning this book. And of course, it's very funny, and it's just a sweet, fun tale that kids would enjoy. And it's also part of a series. So in addition to Petunia, let me think, there's 6 other Petunia books
Wow.
that were published from 51 to 75 was the last one. So those are available, most of them, I think, still in print. Another couple by that same author that aren't in the Petunia series, one is called Donkey Donkey, and that's the story of a donkey he doesn't like his ears. This one actually won a Caldecott medal for the author and illustrator. And if only could have sensible ears like his friend, the horse. So he goes around asking different animals, how should he do with his ears to make himself look better, the way he thinks he should look. And after all he does, each unnatural arrangement of his ears is not a good thing. And he finally meets a little girl who says to him, you have just lovely ears. I love your ears. And he realizes, oh my goodness, my ears are fine just the way they are. Just the way I was given my ears. And it's basically a tale of vanity and folly and learning to accept yourself,
That's really good.
with your protruding ears and all.
That's so good.
So good. And then the third one that I've read by him is called Veronica, and that's about a hippo who wants to become famous, which kids can relate to, I think, in this day and age. And with so many hippopotamuses around where she is, she decides, I need to go to the big city. And if I go to the big city, people will notice me and I'll become famous. Well, she has all kinds of little misfortunes in the city and has to retreat back to her home, and finds out when she comes back, because of all the mishaps that she had to relate to her friends, she became famous amongst her hippo friends. So it's another story that is just, it's sweet and funny, makes you kind of laugh. And then the last book I'll mention is just a quick book it's called Mr. Ferris and His Wheel. And this is based on a true story. And it's a picture book by Catherine Gibbs Davis and illustrated by Gilbert Ford. It's a current book. And it's the story of George Ferris, who defied gravity and seemingly impossible odds to invent what is now considered one of our most iconic amusement rides, the Ferris wheel. And that Ferris wheel opened in the 1893 World's Fair. And it was an amazing structure. And this book is real for, especially I think, little boys or kids that are interested in how things are made, put together. It's a really fun story to realize what this man went through to construct this Ferris wheel, which is a monstrosity compared to most Ferris wheels you'll ever see, because it had each individual part of the wheel had a cab where crowds of people were in each one going around, they had sofas in them and everything. It was huge.
Wow.
So it's a fun little picture book,
Yeah, that is so cool. So that's our preschool group.
That's our preschool.
That's a big preschool group this time.
I know, I have a lot. It's well,
That's
partly
so
because
good.
one author had all these books.
Yes. Yeah.
So moving on along to elementary literature, I've got one. The first one is could be preschool, really elementary. It's the Billy and Blaze series by C.W. Anderson. You probably have heard of that.
I know, yep.
Highly recommend that.
So good.
Billy's just a little boy who loves horses and anything else. He loves it more than anything else in the world. And he gets his own pony for his birthday, and that's his friend Blaze. And basically, the author wrote 6 additional books about Billy and his horse Blaze and different adventures they encounter. But it's a picture book illustrated with more words than some picture books. So it's a little bit longer than your average picture book. So it's a great series of books. And the drawings and the words, they're just, the understanding between the boy and his horse in all these situations, it's just wonderful. And he's the man that illustrated all his own books. So I highly recommend those.
Yeah, they're
And
just such good stories.
they really are. So, and the next one I have for this age group is a series called The Happy Holisters. I'm not sure. Are you familiar with those, Dan?
I'm not. I've never heard of this one.
Okay. This was considered America's favorite classic mystery series back in the day, like back in the 50s, I think.
Wow. Not Nancy Drew or the Hardy Boys.
I think it was before. Well, it might have. It's for a younger age group. I think
Okay,
slightly
well,
younger.
that
It's
might be.
still kind of. It's still kind of the same sort of thing as a
Yeah.
Nancy Drew, but it's about a family. So it's a classic family-oriented 33 book, and they've been republished the entire
Lots of reading
series.
there, guys. You can get to keep your
Yes.
kids busy all summer.
And I've been collecting the hardcovers for years. I still don't have the whole
Wow.
series, but it's basically they were reissued faithfully by the author's family for the next generation
Wow.
of readers. So you can get them all on Amazon right now, which is really
That's
cool.
amazing.
And basically, it's the first one, which is The Happy Holisters, is the adventures of this family as they move into a new home on the shore of a little lake. And the first thing that happens as they're moving is their moving van with like their toys and all these things that were important to them. And their father, who is an inventor, one of his inventions is stolen and disappears, and they don't know where it is. And then they move into their house and they hear that it may be haunted.
Oh,
And so, with a treasure hidden inside. And so, right away, they all set out to solve this mystery. And let me think, there's 5 children, ages 12 down to 4. And they all play a role in, looking for clues along with their parents to help solve the mystery. And in this case, they're trying to figure out what happened to the moving van, where did that disappear, and then what's going on in their house. And they eventually discover a secret stairway, and they find a deserted hut on a nearby island. It's a fun little tale.
yeah.
So
That
we
sounds really
really
good.
that. And the whole series, they're just fun books,
Yeah.
enjoyable.
Yeah.
Okay, the next book is a book that I've written a review on before, and I love this book. I read it to our kids when they were younger. It's called Gone Away Lake by Elizabeth Enright, and then there's a sequel to it called Return to Gone Away, and it earned a Newbery Honor Book in 1957, and it's basically a story of a young girl named Portia Blake and her cousin Julian, and she's gone to spend the summer with her cousin. She and her brother Foster, younger brother, and she's just dreaming, oh, this is going to be a great summer. We're going to explore. They like to get out. Her cousin is a naturalist. He just loves to find
Getting
bugs
outside.
and butterflies and be outside. And so she's just thinking this is going to be the most wonderful summer. And before long, they're out one day and they discover an abandoned Victorian resort community that was once on a lake that turned into a bog over the years. So back in the 1800s, they had this very wealthy community of big homes around this lake that was like their resort area. Well, eventually the lake dried up, and so there was nothing there, and everybody left their homes, and they discover there are 2 elderly siblings still living in one of the homes.
Oh.
And it's basically their adventure with meeting this old couple and not telling anybody, they're keeping it a secret and just enjoying their summer. They take over one of the homes that they find that's been abandoned, and it's just a fun story. It's actually ranked number 42 among all best-time children's novels in a survey published in 2012. So I was like, that's pretty amazing.
For it to have that long of a life is just, and still to be considered some of the best literature out there for children is amazing.
It is.
I feel like I missed out. I'm going to have to read that one.
I reread it again before I wrote my thing, and I was like, oh, so good.
Yeah.
She also is the author of another series, Melendi Family Series, which starts with the Saturdays and the 4-Story Mistake. Then there were 5 and Spiderweb for 2. And she's also the author of a book called Thimble Summer. All of her books feature imaginative, lively, self-reliant children who appreciate nature, and she just puts them in interesting little situations. So I highly recommend her books.
That's so good.
And the last one I have is a book called Blue Willow by Doris Gates. Have you read that one?
I have not.
Okay.
I was so into Anna Green Gables when I was little. That's all I had time for.
Well, you won't be disappointed because I got something for you.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
So Blue Willow is a book that I remember reading when I would think I was in junior high. So it's a long time ago. It's published in 41. So, and it's about a young girl named Janie who has a blue willow plate. It's her one prized possession, and it belonged to her great great grandmother. And her mother died shortly after Janie was born. So she and her father have to go, they become basically itinerant migrant farmers. It's during the Depression and the Dust Bowl. And this plate in her mind represents the home and the family that she hopes to have and a better life. And she befriends a young girl who she shows the plate to, and that just kind of solidifies their friendship. It's just a great fictional account of the Dust Bowl and the Depression. Some people have called it like the Grapes of Wrath for children, but it also won a Newbery Honor and many other awards. It's a darling book.
Yeah. Well, and if you're teaching your kids about, that time of history, you're looking for good literature to include in it because it helps children to relate to historical things when you can give them stories that are at that time. And so keeping in mind that some of these stories could be something you could use
Oh,
to,
absolutely.
to
And
reinforce.
what you're
Yeah.
teaching, your history. It's
Yes.
wonderful
Yes.
tool for that.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to middle school. Some of these, keep in mind the age ranges. I always say this, older, younger, your own children, and these are just generalities. So
yes. Yeah. You get what you want for your kids.
Exactly. The first book I'm going to recommend is a book that is one of our family favorite books of all time. It's called Bud and Me, The True Cross-Country Adventures of the Abernathy Boys by Alta Abernathy. And so it's the wife of one of these boys wrote her husband's story late in like many, many, many years after it had been told to her, but it's based on these two boys' childhood. It's one of the 20th century's most exciting true stories of courage and adventure. The year is 1905. The new century is still in its infancy. Automobiles are little more than rich men's toys, and many short-sighted people feel that everything that can be invented has been invented. So this is the time when this starts out. And at this time, 50% of the American population lived on farms. I mean, this is what we're talking about way back then.
So
and
different.
Teddy Roosevelt is in office. And against this background come these two adventuresome boys, Temple and Bud Abernathy. And they're raised by their widow father, who is known as Catch 'em Alive Jack Abernathy. He's received that title because he catches wolves alive by jumping off his horse onto the back of the wolf and putting his fist in the mouth because he wants to catch them alive and not harm them. He'd catch them for zoos.
Well, now those boys are going to be adventurous because look what they were raised.
Exactly.
And they couldn't help it. They had to be. That was in the DNA.
He's a widow. So his wife had died. So he's got these two boys. He has older daughters who help to take care of these boys. And he's also becomes a very good friend of Teddy Roosevelt, the dad does, because the dad teaches Teddy Roosevelt how he does his catching of wolves.
It sounds like something Teddy Roosevelt would have really gotten into.
Doesn't it? Exactly. So basically, one of the first things that happens is these 5 and 9-year-old boys, Bud and Temple, they set out on a series of daring rides across America. They start their first ride from Texas. They go I think it was from Oklahoma. They ride from Oklahoma to Santa Fe, New Mexico, because they want to go to the capital there. And their dad lets them.
5 and 9.
On horseback alone. They have guns.
Thank goodness. What could go wrong?
Yeah. Well, wolves. One thing.
Yes, but they know how to jump on them now. So
it's just, you start reading this and you're like,
wow, this is true?
It's a true story. I'm serious. Now, maybe some of the things have been embellished a bit.
I mean, but still.
The dad did keep an eye on them, and he made them stop at certain places where they could get money to buy some food and stuff like that. And he had people, he was actually a marshal,
Okay.
And so he was able to tell people, keep an eye on my kids, but they couldn't keep an eye on them every minute of it. So they did that successfully. And then after they did that, they were so energized by that they decided that they needed to go to New York City alone on horseback to meet their friend Teddy, because he was going to be sailing on a ship from Africa and docking in New York, and they're going to have a big parade, and they wanted to be there for that. So they did. They went to New York. First they went to DC, then they went to New York City, and they spent some time, and their dad ended up meeting them in New York City. I mean, it's just an incredible book.
And I thought Sign of the Beaver was like crazy.
I did too.
But man, that's nothing.
I mean, there's actually stories in the newspapers about what these guys did, because then after that, a New York promoter or some promoters challenged them to ride from Coney Island, which is on Long Island, New York,
Yep.
to San Francisco in 60 days. And basically the rule was they were allowed only one change of horses, and they could not sleep or eat under roof anytime during their entire trip.
That's like
And they,
mountain ranges and everything they had to
yeah,
cross.
and they were gonna win $10,000 in prize money if they did it. I'm not going to give any of this away, so you have to read the book to find out what's going on.
Well, now I got a book to buy.
It is worth it if you can get your
That's
hands on it.
amazing.
And I wrote a review in the Maché magazine, I think,
Yeah.
on But and Me. So I wrote just a brief thing on that. So okay, the next book is another book that I think is a great read aloud for kids of all ages. Summer of the Monkeys by Wilson Rawls. And you may know that name, Wilson Rawls.
Yeah.
He is the author of Where the Red Fern Grows.
I was just gonna say, because I remember reading the Where the Red Fern Grows when I was in 7th grade and bawling like a baby with at a certain point.
It's a great book, but
It
it's
is.
a tearjerker.
So
Summer
sad,
of the
but
Monkeys is like the opposite, because it's hilarious for the most
Okay.
part. There are some sad parts toward the end, but nothing like that one. But this one is very comical. And it's the story of a 14-year-old boy named J. Barry Lee, who is trekking through the Ozark Mountains of Oklahoma, where he lives. And
Yep.
he discovers a tree full of monkeys, which, of course, monkeys live in Oklahoma, don't they? Native habitat and all that.
Yeah.
But then he learns from his grandfather that the monkeys have escaped from a traveling circus that had a derailment of some sort. And there's a big reward for these monkeys. So somebody's paying to get these monkeys back. And I think there's like a bunch of them that are $2 a monkey. But then there's one monkey that they'll pay $100 for, because he's a
Wow.
special monkey. And so it's the story of what he goes through to try to capture these monkeys, and who's laughing at who at the end, you know?
I strongly suspect the monkeys get the better of him.
Right. It says people have learned a lot more than he bargained for, not just about monkeys by the end of this. It's really a good
So
story.
good.
Actually, I've got my husband reading it to me right now out loud, because I'm like, I've read it before, but I'm like, you need to read this out loud because you've never read it. So he's reading it, and we're laughing together. It's really
that's
great.
so fun.
Okay, the next book is part of a series, and this is a book I haven't read all these. My kids really enjoyed them, and our daughter enjoyed them. And it's called the Viking Quest series by Lois Walfrid Johnson, and Raiders from the Sea is the first one. And it's basically the story of a brother and sister who are taken from their home in Ireland after a young Viking prince captures them, like basically takes them hostage or whatever. And he sets the brother free on the Irish coast, far from home. But the sister, he takes her, I think, to like Norway on the Viking ship. So then it's the story of them trying to get back together and find each other again. And basically, one of the things it says is they have to trust their all-powerful God in the midst of difficult situations. So there's definitely a Christian element to these books. And there are 5 books in this series. So I think they're very enjoyable for that age, middle age group.
Middle school.
Middle school. Yeah. Middle age.
That's so good. Well, middle-agers like them too.
Yeah.
Anybody can read these.
That's true. And the next one is also a series, and you mentioned it, Dale. It's the Anne of Green Gables series.
Oh, my favorite of all time.
And that one is another one that like broad ranges. I mean, it's good through adulthood. I reread them again some years back, and I
reread them every year.
I'm impressed that you do that.
I still have well, I don't have it with me, but I still have the series that I bought when I was like 8 years old. I would do chores, and every week I would get my money together, and I'd go up to the bookstore and buy the next one, and then read it while I'm earning money for the next one.
The next one.
Yeah.
That's
and
great.
Mark Twain called Anne Shirley the best child character in all of literature.
You know, I believe it. And
she is. She just
really is amazing.
The books are so good. If you've seen the movies, they're so much better than the movies. The movies are
books
good,
are, yeah,
but the
and
books are so much better.
it just starts off so sweet. There's this orphan, who's very kind of hot tempered, but she's also has an optimistic
Very sensitive, yeah.
spirit, and she's very imaginative, very creative, and she comes to live with an old couple who adopt her, basically brother and sister,
Mm-hmm.
thinking they had adopted a boy, and there this young girl shows up.
Mm-hmm.
But she kind of works her way into both their hearts
Yeah.
and the whole town that she lives in. And she's kind of another one of these kids who she makes little hot-headed mistakes and has to learn from them
She
often.
loses her temper.
Yes, she does. And but it's so sweet to see how she works out these things as she's growing up and maturing.
Yeah.
It's a sweet story. And actually, it's funny, the thing that I found, it says part Tom Sawyer,
Yeah.
part Jane Eyre.
Yep.
By the end of the book, she's become the heroine of her own story. And that is the
Yeah.
truth. So
It's the
cool.
best of all worlds. All 7 of them, just
They
incredible.
are. Yes,
Incredible.
there are like, well, I think there's 8 of them.
Yeah. Oh, is there 8? Oh, there
Yeah,
is. There is.
there
Yes,
is
because
8.
Rilla, the one at the end is
Rilla
her
of
daughter,
Ingleside.
Rilla of Ingleside. And
Yeah.
when I say movies, I don't mean the ones on Netflix. Just don't bother.
No. I
Don't
agree.
bother. Not at all. I mean, fine. I mean, if you like that, fine. Whatever. I don't know. I did not, but I'm such a purist. I'm talking about the series that Kevin Sullivan did way back in like
That's
the mid to late 80s with Megan Follows playing
that's
Anne.
fun. Yes,
And
really good.
Jonathan Crombie is Gilbert. He was
It's so
exactly
good.
what I pictured Gilbert being too. But anyway, so good.
It's a great series. And I remember reading the first book to our kids years ago when our oldest was pretty young. And
Yeah.
we got done and he says to me, Mom, that's the best book ever.
It's
And he
not
was
just for
wonderful.
girls.
And I was like, and he says to me, and I said, well, there's a movie. He goes, I don't want to see the movie. He goes, I don't want to wreck the book. It was so good.
It was
And I was
so
thinking,
good.
I was thinking for a boy to say that. It just
Yep.
was surprising to me.
Yep.
So
Every year, I just love. That's just like in me. I love those
yeah,
books. Yeah.
I agree. It's one of my favorite series
Yep.
ever. Okay, moving on to high school. The first book I have on my list is a book it's a personal favorite of mine. It's called The Yearling by Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings, and it was first published in 1938. It was the best-selling novel in the United States in 1938. And it also won the Pulitzer Prize in 1939.
I didn't know it won the Pulitzer. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. And it's like there's no better novel that epitomizes the love between a child and their pet as this book. I mean, it will really move you. This young boy, Jody, adopts an orphan fawn who he calls Flag. And he and his family, it's just he and his mom and dad, they live in the backwoods of Florida. Probably, I'm not even sure time frame, probably 30s,
Yeah, I think it's like the late 30s, close to the.
Yeah, it's so probably the time around when the book was written, and it's based on the author's own experience from living there. And so it's just the story of how their family, kind of has a hard scrabble existence and trying to just feed themselves and exist in this area of the world. And this little deer becomes this little fawn, grows up, and all that entails for their family. It is a great piece of American literature, I think. So I highly recommend that. And it's a big book. So
Yeah.
and she also wrote other books. She's got a selection of other books like South Moon Under, Cross Creek, The Sojourner. She's a good writer. So,
Yeah.
But this is definitely her best book. So the next one is a book by an author I've mentioned before. Her name's Jean Stratton Porter. And this book is called Laddie, A True Blue Story. And it's loosely based on the author's own childhood. Laddie is a classic tale of rich girl, poor boy romance, and also the story of a child of nature and her idyllic childhood. She lived in this young girl, the main character in the story, they call her little sister, and it's narrated from her perspective. And the reason it's called Laddie is because her oldest brother, Laddie, was her hero. So this is the story of their family, and it takes place probably the mid to late 1800s. So it goes back a ways, and it takes place in the Midwest, and they live on a beautiful acreage it's a farm with fruit trees and just a lovely area. And the other thing that's interesting is I feel like the mom and dad in the beginning, they almost are like homeschooling their kids. They read their Bible to them, they read all kinds of things, and they're just like training them about life. This is how you live life. It's just a beautiful story. It's another big book. And we see how this loving family, they discipline and care for one another with love and a belief in God and their savior. And you see but there's still some angst and some problems, because I think that at one point their dad has been holding a long-term grudge. The father has forsaken God, basically, because he's let that grudge poison his heart. It's a good book, good ending. You will enjoy this book a lot. And there's a little bit of mystery in it too, so, which is always good. And the next one is a classic, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain.
Yes.
It is really a great book. It's one of the great American novels that
it really is
should read at some point in their life, really.
Yep.
Tom Sawyer was kind of the predecessor, and you might want to read The Adventures of Tom Sawyer first, but The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn is just way surpasses that in terms of it's a social commentary, basically. It's got a lot of profound moral dilemmas that these young boys, it's a story of these two boys, basically Jim, who is a slave, and Huck Finn. And together they're going on a raft ride down the Mississippi, and they're running away, basically. And all the things they encounter on this, they encounter a lot of corruption, hypocrisy by people that would be considered respectable society. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a social commentary in that. And it shows the weakest members of society, basically, because Jim is a slave and Huck is a very poor young man, are forced to use their wits to survive. And they do, and there are parts that are actually quite humorous too.
Oh yeah, no, it's got it all.
It really does. It really does.
It's got it all.
Parts of it are laugh out loud funny. So
yeah. No, it's a great book, and I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine going through high school and not having read it.
Yeah, it's just a great book. So, and I think I got through high school and never read it, so I read it as an adult, and I loved it.
Yeah, there you go.
Fantastic. And my last and final book is a little bit of a departure. It's for teens and adults. It's a biography it's by a woman called Darlene Diebler Rose, and it's called Evidence Not Seen. It's the true story of one woman's triumph of faith. It's about a newlywed American missionary and her husband who survived 4 years in a notorious Japanese prison camp set deep in the jungles of New Guinea. So this was during World War II. Thinking that she was never going to see her husband again, she was forced to sign a false confession and face the executioner's sword, only to be miraculously spared. And I read this many years ago, and I wrote a thing on Goodreads, like a little review. And this is what I wrote. I said, "This is without a doubt one of the best autobiographies I've ever read. It is a true story." And it occurred in 1938. This newlywed missionary and her husband, they spent the last 4 years of their time there in a Japanese prison camp deep within the jungle. It reveals the hand of God in her life like nothing I've ever seen before. It's like, it brought me to tears at the end, and it testifies to her courage and commitment to the Lord and unyielding faith, even in the midst of horrific events. It is a wonder. I just highly recommend it to people. It is such a worthwhile read.
I love biographies. I love true stories.
I do
just gravitate towards them. That sounds amazing.
So it's just not as well known as some of the other ones, but it's an amazing it's really her autobiography. She wrote it.
Yeah.
So
wow. That's amazing. Well, Susan, you gave us a lot.
I did. I kind of had to go through it really fast, but it was like,
no, it's good. It's good. We need a lot. Summer is a great time to enjoyment read.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's a ton of other books out there for people to enjoy.
Absolutely.
Just whatever, whatever calls to you.
Well, and don't forget, guys, go to the Maché book list on Amazon. I'll link it in the description of this podcast, so you'll see it. It'll take you right to it. Not only will all these titles be on there, but all the previous books we've talked about are also on there. And you can just go ahead and just order them, just order them on Amazon, or order them from your library, whatever you want to do. If it's something you want to read and you're trying to build up a good home library, there you go. You can just click on the link. Again, Maché makes no money off of this. This is just us wanting to bless you guys and give you guys some really good books for your family to be able to enjoy. And there's a lot on there right now. So you're going to get the benefit of this is, I think, our fifth. Is it our fourth or
Yeah, it
fifth?
must be our fifth. I think it is our
It's
fifth.
our fifth Maché book club. So you've got 4 previous book clubs. Those books are on there as well. So I'm
So
excited. Well, Susan, thank you so,
yeah,
so much.
you're welcome. And thank you for having me, Dale. I do enjoy this so much. I enjoy just reminding myself of all these wonderful books that are
It's
out
so
there.
fun.
And I'm still learning every day. I mean, other people recommend books and,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just,
Half of the books on your list I'd never heard of. And I'm like, well, now I got to read those.
well, I know whenever you think you know all the books, there's no way we can know all the
I
books.
know. I know. It's
And there are a
unbelievable.
lot of really, really good books out there.
Yep. And also, you guys, don't forget to check out like Audible books. Sometimes, like when you're on road trips this summer, books on audio, if you go on Spotify, if you have like a family membership on Spotify, you can get audiobooks for free. And a lot of these books, yeah, you just can listen to them for free. And my husband and I will do that. Yeah. And so when we're
Wow.
road tripping in the summer, because we all get in our cars and go like to the
Mm-hmm.
lake or go, whatever, a family vacation road trip type thing, it's a great opportunity to just, or even just like you're just on the lake relaxing, putting in your headphones and just listening to a story sometimes is just an amazing thing. I
Yeah.
used to do that every night with my kids. I would turn something on in their bedrooms and they would listen to like a book. And of
Yeah,
course it was
we
back
would
back
do
then it
that
was on
too. Yeah,
CD,
CDs
but
or cassettes when my kids were little.
when we first started the Narnia series, it was on tape, on cassette tape, and then we upgraded to the CDs because my kids couldn't stand not having them because they loved these books. And then we went from that. Now it's on digital, which is
Yeah,
so much better because you can just take it everywhere you go.
exactly. Yeah.
But anyway, thank you so much, Susan. We just really appreciate you and all your knowledge. And Susan will be back in the fall with another book list for all ages. Starting, we'll probably do it like in August, and then we'll do again another holiday one. So well, I hope so. It's up to Susan how much she wants to do this and how busy and crazy her life is. But that's the goal. We'll see what happens. But in the meantime, there's a lot for you to think about. So thank you so much, Susan, for being a part of.
Thank you, Dale. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me. I really appreciate it. And have a great summer reading, everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, you guys enjoy it. I know I will. Bye
Bye.
bye.